The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. This is hour number 4 of the X Zone tonight. And before I get to our special guest this hour, a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of having on the show a number of times, his name is John MILOR. I just have to do a little bit of backstepping here with our last guest, Mary Beth Lawton. Those of you who have been listening to the show and now watching the show over the last 33 years know that I, at times, pull no punches. And I'll tell you, red flags were flying as soon as we started because she said that she did not know that this was going to be audio and video. Well, we send out information saying it is audio and video. And then she's a psychic. She should have known that it was audio video. She should have known that I was going to try and have her validate her abilities that she was talking about. And she should have known that I was going to ask her the financial credibility of her organization. But she didn't. She's gone. And you know what? I can hardly wait until we put that interview online for the members of the X Zone Nation who do not listen to or watch our shows live, but it'll be very interesting to see what happens. John MILOR is our special guest. His website is www.christianufology.net is one of them. And John is a former member of the military. And John, great seeing you, my friend. And once again, I know you're retired, but thank you for your service.
Thank you.
John, you're a pioneer in the emerging field of Christian ufology. You've got over 30 years' experience and 4 published books covering a combination of ancient astronaut research, theology, and end times prophecy. Tell us more about that, and what was it that intrigued you so much that you've continued your investigation into these fields?
Well, it actually goes back to being 5 years old when I heard my great-grandmother's testimony that, to the whole family actually, something that she had bottled up for about, 60 years.
Wow.
But she and her sister saw a UFO in the plains of Kentucky during broad daylight. This thing just flew right by, about 30, 40 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
It was off the ground, maybe 20, 30 feet. And they even saw the occupant. And she said it was this cigar-shaped thing with like a polished aluminum and a glass dome on the top. And her and her sister just saw this thing fly by and they were like, no frame of reference. All they could do is just kind of describe it to their mother. But, they had never seen a vehicle before at that time. This was like over 100 years ago. And they lived out in the plains of Kentucky. She actually walked across a good chunk of the United States behind the wagon when they came.
Oh my gosh.
So, being out in the middle of nowhere and a wagon is the extent of the technology you've ever seen, this thing made a very strong impression on her and her sister. And of course, they were just blown away. They ran home. They told their mother about it. And this was the Bible Belt, and they were from a very strong, believing Christian background. And their mother told them, "Don't ever say anything about this insane story to me or anybody else again. Put a lid on it." And they did what they were told. And her sister died a few years after that, which I found out about. I never found that out from her. I got her diaries, so I was reading that in her diaries and stuff. And but she kept this to herself for decades. And my great grandmother was just fervent believer, and she married a My great-grandfather was an evangelist, pastor. They traveled the United States, went to most of the states in the United States at the turn of the century during the Great Depression and back then. And just, amazing life that they had, but fervent faith, unlike anybody you'd imagine. So this is the last person you'd think, I saw a UFO.
Yeah.
So yeah, she told it. Told it to the whole family, reading a story in the newspaper about a UFO sighting, and then just dropped the bomb, And yeah, when I was a teenager, I saw a UFO, and she told us all the story. And I was only 5, I remember this back in 1975. So I'm like, what's my mom's like, Star Trek, Star Trek, we watch it, kind of like religiously we watch Star Trek. So that's how she relayed the story to me. And I just believed back then, okay, those things are real. The Bible's real. It's just both real. And I never gave it much thought after that. My grandmother didn't really consider it any big deal either, worth reconciling. She just said, I don't care what people think. Those things are real, period. But now, these days, we're hearing about abductions. The concept of alien life connects automatically into evolution. The Ancient Astronaut show is coming out, and just every single episode saying the Bible is wrong. It's all a mistake. All these religions are a mistake. We're actually seeded from the stars, and it's all about beings from other worlds. And that didn't set right with me. So when I first became a on fire believer back when I was 21, after I had a vision of heaven, I changed overnight. It was like Ebenezer Scrooge, right? I was one kind of guy one day, had this incredible dream, and woke up like, okay, I have to stop this. Things that I never would have quit,
Could you share that dream with us?
So
Now, if you don't want to, John, I understand.
yeah, I can. I even wrote it in a book. It's one of my books, The Eagle Star Prophecy. I talk about 3 dreams I had. 2 that I had when I was 12, where I was taken to heaven and shown things. But the last dream was when it actually became real to me, and I changed as a human being, because I was on, I was partying constantly. I was completely out of it, headed down the road of severe addiction. And God showed me in this dream, if I didn't stop, I was going to either be dead or in prison. But the dream is kind of odd. I was with a friend of mine. We ended up in this drug compound with people with machine guns all over the place. I was scared, and I'm like, I just want to get out of this. I don't know how I got myself into this mess. And a helicopter, a Black Hawk, came and landed right in front of us. The door opened, and we heard a voice, me and my friend, get in. We just wanted to get out of there, so we just jumped in this helicopter. Door shut, and off it flew. Before we knew it, this helicopter pilot was doing these crazy things. He dropped the helicopter down and went into this tunnel through a mountain. And when it came out the other side, there were these power lines we thought we were going to hit, and he did a flip around them just to prove that whatever it was, he could handle it. And then he flew up, and we're on this plain of golden wheat fields for as far as the eye could see, beautiful sunrise, and all of that crap was behind us, and we were finally free, and I felt so relieved. And then I started to wonder, who's this pilot? What is this all about? And I looked up in the front, and the pilot was invisible. I saw a dent in the seat, and I saw the controls moving. But he was invisible. And so I sat back and I said to my friend, Ramey, dude, the pilot's invisible. And we still kind of giggled about it, and we're like, what is this all about? And then suddenly it landed, and the door opened, and we both jumped out. We heard, get out, and we got out. And then the voice said to my friend, you get back in. So he got back in, the door shut, and off flew the helicopter. And I was back at the compound, but it was daytime, and there were a bunch of dead bodies all over the place. So I was taken right in the nick of time before something horrific happened. And that's kind of how it was relayed to me, like, if you don't stop, something very bad is going to happen to you. And I ended up walking out of that place, and then I woke up. And the most amazing part about it is after I woke up, because I was sitting in my bed and recalling the dream and how good I felt, like all of these addictions and everything were just gone. Addictions I had for years, gone. And I remember just recalling the dream in my head when I got to the pilot part, and I'm like, oh yeah, it was invisible. Who was that pilot? And I asked the question just thinking to myself and verbalizing out loud. But the answer was verbally given in my ear, Jesus. And it hit me like a bolt of lightning. I mean, just this energy blasted me, and it was pure love saturating me. The vibrations just incredible. I fell out of my bed. I felt him there in my room, and I decided, okay, you got me. This is like my Apostle Paul Emmaus Road or Road to Damascus moment, you know. And that was when I was 21, so it was 31 years ago that happened, and all the things I was doing at that time, overnight, I quit. So, but then, you know, life kicked in and I started resuming normal things. But, you know, I had a checklist. I'm like, well, what do Christians do? I know Grandma taught me to pray and stuff. So obviously, yeah, I got to pray every day. But I think I got to go to a church now, and I need to get baptized. And let's read the Bible. Pulled open the Bible and I started reading it, and all my life had been spiritual, totally immersed in occult and paranormal type stuff. It just totally fascinated me. So I was encyclopedic with all of this stuff. But now I was reading the Bible, and in Genesis, you know, I'm reading creation, and I only get to Genesis chapter 6, and I'm reading about these otherworldly beings crossing with humans and creating these genetic monstrosities, giants known as the Nephilim. And I'm like, wow, I know what this is, and I haven't heard anybody say a single word about this in any church, in any sermon, ever.
All right, let's have a bit of a cliffhanger here because I have to take a break.
Yeah.
Exonation, our guest this hour is John MILOR. And what's the best website for you? You've got a number of them here.
Go to johnmilor.com. JOHNMILOR.
I'm sorry, I've been calling you Miller. It's MILOR.
Yeah, Milor.
All right, stand by, John. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Do you enjoy paranormal, sci-fi romance, yet find yourself tired of the same old themes and storylines? Then you won't want to miss Kahira O'Donnell's latest exciting release, To Taste You Again. Alien Lord Kane McKean knew the moment that his destined mate was born. He watched from afar, waiting for her to grow from child to woman. However, before she was old enough, she was stolen from her home world by flesh pirates. Kane searched 10 long years to find her held in a suspension chamber, a 10-year-old girl in a woman's body. He rescued her and swore to give her time to grow up, but with his very life depending upon winning her as a mate, has he waited too long? Get your copy today. To Taste You Again by Kahira O'Donnell is now available on Amazon or KahiraO'Donnell.com. Welcome back, everyone. John MILOR is our guest of this hour. www.johnmilor.com. That's MILOR. John, MILOR.com. So the aha moment came with the book of Genesis, with I would imagine, the Nephilim.
Yeah, that's what first woke me up. And then, of course, I remembered Von Daniken's stuff, and I had that in my head, but I kind of looked back before this experience, I was more UFOlogist, less Christian. I was just,
Right.
I accepted evolution. It just, my head was all over the place with, reality. But, after that experience, I was like, I'm going to read the Bible and I'm going to do my best to understand it and not make any concessions for it. I'm a believer first, ufologist second.
Right.
So von Doniken has got that reversed. He did have a Catholic upbringing, but I don't think he's much of a Catholic anymore. I think he believes that aliens are God. That we were seeded here by an alien race, which, I don't believe that. The Bible specifically says it is Elohim. It identifies him as being the one who created heavens and earth, that he's the one that created humanity. And in the future, we're going to receive the gospel from angels, it says in Revelation 14:6, which is an interesting thing. And I'm wondering what that's going to look like. But the word that these angels are going to say is verbatim pretty much, hey, you got to worship the God who is the creator of the heavens and the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically a message that counters this ancient astronaut message, and I think that there's a reason why there's several hundred episodes of Ancient Aliens. That show might even be funded by our government in some way, to produce this message to get people ready for something that's coming, because they think Christians are going to freak out. And there's still enough Christians here that if our sky were to be populated with a bunch of spacecraft tomorrow morning, they would be flipping out. So that's part of the reason for my book. There's two reasons for it, two missions. One is to reach Christians and let them know, hey, there's another way that you can understand this, another lens that you can look through it that is scripturally solid. You don't have to make concessions and throw away your faith. You can believe that extraterrestrials are real and still hold on to your faith. And Senator Burchett, Tim Burchett from Tennessee, not senator, he's a congressman, representative, but he believes the same thing. So I'm glad we have at least somebody in our government that kind of sees things the way I do. And I sent him one of my books, and he was cool enough to write me back. So
That is cool.
yeah.
The Bible, in my opinion, is the greatest book that has ever been written. It is a book that, when you read it and you follow it, it just makes you a better person. What it does is it teaches you right from wrong, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is what the world needs. And I believe that the Bible also proves the existence of possibilities beyond our understanding. And I don't understand why people have to believe that whatever happens on this planet is not due to God or Jesus, that it has to be extraterrestrials. I've never understood that mentality.
Yeah. Why is it one or the other?
Yeah.
The ironic thing is the foundations of our modern day science came from believers, came from theologians. Sir Isaac Newton was a theologian.
That's right.
The father of genetics, Mendel, was a theologian. Copernicus, the first one who conceived of the idea that the earth was not in the center of the universe, he was a theologian. But he had to keep it under wraps because the church has this habit, and it goes back for a long time, of getting fixated on things that are not right and elevating their level of importance to something that's just, it was never meant to be that way. The Bible nowhere says that the earth is the center of the universe. Yet the early church, or the church back in his day, in the 1500s, they were absolutely, this is heresy to suggest that earth is not in the center of the universe. It's like, where did they get this idea? They just read a few things. God created the heavens and the earth. Oh, because of that sentence, Genesis 1:1, then the earth must be in the center of all creation. Well, maybe it is, but maybe not in the way that you think.
Exactly.
solar regulation, Earth goes around the sun,
Mm-hmm.
so, and this is just another example of that. People thinking that angels can't possibly be extraterrestrials because it's a mixed metaphor. They can't wrap their head around it. So a lot of my research basically deals with, definitions. What's heaven? What's the difference between heaven and earth? Is heaven physical? Actually, it is. But people have a hard time conceiving of that because you die and you go to heaven, right? So physical, your spirit goes to heaven. So how can it be physical? But you can be in heaven and be a spirit in a physical heaven. It's physical because it's coming to earth in the future, and the Bible says that in Revelation 21. How can a non-physical place come to a physical place? You read these things, you see it right there. It's black and white. So that's what a lot of my research is, combination of theology, and misconceptions. People are saying, here's, angels can't use technology. Really? Ezekiel chapter 10? Did you read that? That certainly looks like a UFO to me.
Sounds like one, yeah.
Yeah, there's just all kinds of things in the Bible, this column of cloud and fire at day and cloud at night, and feeding the nation of Israel for 40 years, and then the Red Sea parting. And it does look like technology. And any ancient astronaut theorist is going to say, yeah, that's technology. Those are ETs. But I'm like, well, maybe those are angels and God is with them. And maybe the angels are using technology, but that doesn't mean God is limited to have to use technology. You don't have to cross that bridge. You can take the position that God delegates a lot of functions to angels. He's not a micromanager. He created this universe. He created it full of life. He gave these angels responsibilities. And they use technology. The Bible is very clear about it. So I don't see the problem. And my grandmother never even saw the problem either. So I'm kind of with her, except I'm trying to explain this to a lot of people.
What is your biggest hill that you have to climb when presenting your belief to other people who have no concept of what true religion and true, what the Bible is all about?
It depends. People get hung up on certain things, like the concept of heaven not being a physical place, but being rather this symbolic thing, and it's something incomprehensible when the Bible uses plain language to describe heaven. It describes it as a place with clouds, with cities, with people, with animals. That's a physical place. It's an atmosphere. It's obviously a glorified planet, the way it's described. If we were to travel there, we might not see it like that because we're in a different dimension. And now, honestly, with quantum physics, we should get a better grasp of that you can have multiple layers of existence in the same physical space. And that's what we're looking at. The Bible actually even describes Earth that way, that hell is in the center of the earth, and it's not a solid rock or magma, lava, or whatever, but it's a civilization that's down there, and it's not a good place. And then it describes the sky. It describes first heaven. There's actually three heavens. First heaven is the outer atmosphere of the earth. I think the earth, actually multidimensional, is like an onion with layers of existence in it. That if you were to, and I described this in one of my fiction books, The Dark World Paradox, where they have to get to first heaven, and to get there, they steal a jet and they fly up to a certain place, and then they do something to their atomic structure, and suddenly they're at the bottom of an ocean, and that's the idea that it's like a frequency of atomic structure, and if you modify that, then you're in another place, geographically the same place, but a different dimension. But it's still a physical world. The idea of parallel universes and stuff like that, it all ties into it. So that's where I'm thinking in terms of what is heaven, and how do you actually describe it, and how can people have multiple layers of existence, even in their own bodies. Like I have a
Yeah.
spirit inside of my physical body. My body is basically an interface into this world. Um, and the thing about it, it's not junk. It's going to be resurrected. So, what would be the point of resurrecting a physical body if the glorified realm isn't a physical place for that physical body? So, describing the nature of the universe, that's probably one of the more difficult areas. And then the differences between angels and aliens, that's another issue, because people think of aliens as scientists and evolution and all this other stuff. And I think there is a lot of deception in there. But the Bible says there's good guys and bad guys. A bunch of angels sinned. So obviously, whatever message they have, it's going to be a lie. And the Bible warns us. It says in the future, we're going to return to the days of Noah. Genesis 6 stuff, that's going to happen again. That's what Jesus said. We're going to be like the days of Noah again. And why would he single out that time frame? Out of all of the different ages in the Bible, he singles out the days of Noah and then also Sodom and Gomorrah. So we know, of course, humanity was in a depraved state, but there's many times in history where humanity was in a depraved state. In those occasions, they were in a depraved state mostly because these otherworldly beings were manipulating it and making it like off the chart depraved. And that's what you saw in Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's what you saw in the days of Noah. Otherworldly beings coming in and just trashing it.
Yeah, the events of Sodom and Gomorrah certainly sound like a nuclear attack.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Who knows what kind of technology that was? I mean, Lot's wife just looked at it and it just...
Pillar of salt, bang.
Yeah, she became like transformed into this pillar of... What was that? Shouldn't have looked, but...
Where do you think the Bible really starts? Does it start with Adam and Eve, or does it start with Noah? I heard a theory once that Noah was a space commander of a ship, and this is where the animals 2x2 and the actual animals 2x2 were DNA. No,
well, that's not what the Bible says. He built a boat, and it gives the dimensions of the boat.
Yep.
It says he made it out of wood. So if you're going to accept that, then you would have to basically toss out the biblical narrative to do it. Although I wouldn't see it as unlikely that Noah had encountered otherworldly beings.
Mm-hmm.
The Nephilim were all over the place.
Yep.
It was hard not to see them. And in fact, the flood was brought to save them, because if the flood didn't happen, they probably would have been killed. There was violence, unbridled violence in the world at that time. And God waited until the last second, and you had just one family left that was halfway decent, and some animals, and he got them in there and he got them out of that. But in terms of where the Bible starts, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. I think that's the original creation, and that actually could be billions of years ago. Genesis 1:2 is very interesting because of the words that are used, and it talks about a destruction. The earth became void and without form.
Yeah.
That is a destructive act. So whatever was here, which I believe was an entire civilization, angelic civilization on this planet, God wiped it out. So
in your opinion, the verse in the Bible that says, "And God said, let us create man." Who's the us?
B'nai Elohim is the sons of God, but Elohim as itself is a plural word. So I've had discussions with this about theologians that wanted to make this their bridge to burn. Dr. Heiser, he really was emphatic about it, that there is a Godhead and God did the creating, but the other angels were present, and that's what his big thing was. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have an issue with that,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Elohim is a word that refers to the Trinity. The Trinity is detailed in the New Testament, Colossians chapter 1, I mean, tells you that it is through Jesus that God made everything. And the Holy Spirit is identified with God and his Spirit. All three are present at Jesus' baptism. So you have Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. This is God's nature, sort of like time. One thing, but past, present, and future. Three roles. I mean, our existence is created so that we can understand the Trinity. But that word actually refers to the Trinity. And that's my take on it.
John, stand by. We've got to take another break here. Exonation John MILOR is our guest, www.johnmilor.com. And we'll both be back on the other side as we continue this conversation from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
Exonation John MILOR is our special guest. John, how do we relate the four horsemen of the apocalypse in today's society?
I actually talk about, one of my books, The Strong Delusion, I talk about there's a common misconception with one of those horsemen, with Muslims, that believe that the white horseman, one of those four is the white horseman, the warrior conquering and to conquer. That's actually the Antichrist, but they have him identified as the good guy, and they actually talk about it. But honestly, I think that the pandemic that we just saw was a foretaste of possibly the plague.
Wow.
One of those horsemen. Seeing everything that happened, the way that it went down, the censorship, and even now, trying to mandate kids to get the vaccine when they even know that the vaccine is more of a threat to kids than COVID. There was research that just came out from John Hopkins on that, and it's like they're still doubling down. They're still trying to force everybody to take this. And honestly, that's why I got out of the military. I have vaccinated for 29 years, never questioned it until all of this came down, and the mRNA technology just didn't sound right. Didn't set well with me. And I started researching it. And the more I found out, the more I'm like, no, I can't bring myself to do it. So I held out as long as I could, but basically they're going to force us to do it in the military with this administration. So I had the option to retire, and I did. But seeing the way they were going with it, trying to force people to do it, it came to my attention that, this is exactly how the mark of the beast is going to happen. It's going to be something that they're going to try to force people to do, and there has to be a drive behind it that will make it seem like it's a moral imperative. You have to take this mark, this thing that's, and Bill Gates is already talking about it, tracking vaccinations with a global tracking system. And this system, you can't get away from it. You'll be able to tell if somebody's vaccinated with this thing, and he's pushing for it now. So he was the one talking about COVID 10 years before COVID happened, saying that we were going to have a pandemic.
Are you still there, John? Yeah.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Is it possible that, yeah, I can now. Is it possible that Bill Gates is the Antichrist?
No. No, the Bible's clear where the Antichrist will come from. It's clear a lot of connections about the political connections. He'll be in the Middle East. Geographically, probably the nation of Syria. It's a nation that has to be north of Egypt because he'll be at war with a king from Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the Bible tells you all of these clues, and you piece together Daniel's prophecies and then prophecies in Revelation. They actually give geographic pictures that span time, so that if the countries change names, you would still know where they were coming from. You're talking about the ancient Grecian quadrant and where it overlaps with the Roman, Empire, and then the Persians and stuff, and you end up with a couple of possibilities. Could be Lebanon, could be Assyria, but Isaiah actually called them the Assyrians. So I'd say modern day Syria is the most likely location where the Antichrist will rise to power. And, he's specifically called an Assyrian by the prophet Isaiah. So I would say that has to be the location.
In your opinion, are we in the end times right now?
Yes. Yes. And I honestly keep wondering, like, how much further can we keep going? How bad is it going to get?
Mm-hmm.
But everything that we see in the world today, just everywhere you look, and you start to describe what's going on, there's Bible prophecy behind it. Yeah.
In your opinion, is there anything that people can do to repent or get onto the better side of the Creator?
It starts with talking to God, and it's not a formula. The more I read the Bible and the more I have developed my relationship with God, he is so personal, so down to earth. That's funny, God, people think of him as in heaven and, disconnected from us, but he's the most down to earth human being that anybody would ever know. He's easygoing, and he's so forgiving. So it starts with a conversation with him, and it doesn't even have to be, you might not even know what to say. The thief on the cross, he was like,
oh, yeah.
He didn't even say, forgive me, he just said, please remember me. And Jesus is like, you're good. Close enough. He's looking for an excuse to forgive people if they're just willing to open a dialogue with him. And once you do that, and he sees that it's a genuine act of communication, people reaching out to him, then he will come and meet them. And it will be something that's just amazing.
John, what effect do you think that the youth of today are facing because they've taken the Bible out of schools?
That is probably one of the biggest signs, not so much the Bible, but the attack on the youth, the attacks on their identity, the attacks on, trying to get them to believe anything that will reject the Bible in any way, shape, or form, and they package it in all of this nice euphemisms, but it's hideous what's happening with kids today that, and I speak as a father and grandfather. I see it happening all around, and it's terrible. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if I were homeschooling, if my kids were in school today, I'd be homeschooling, because it's so toxic. Schools, not just dealing with other kids and all of that, but the teachers, the curriculum is just toxic. Man, just lots of prayer. Lots of prayer. Kids need it.
The world needs it. Stand by, John. We've got to take our final break. Exo Nation, John Milor is our guest, and we'll be back as we wrap up this hour and tonight's show here on the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Whatever you do, don't go away. To be accosted in her bed and abducted by aliens was the last thing Michelle expected. Yet the fateful morning of her destined death changed everything. Lord Lan Ramos, Alpha King of Vidar, the monstrous befanged alien looming over her bed, was her destined mate come to save her from certain death. He is a telepathic mute shifter. Can Michelle accept him and his animal? Once on Lan's home planet, Michelle becomes increasingly psychic, revealing her as the fabled Oracle of Vidar. As factions conspire to destroy them, will they overcome mounting threats? Will Michelle's growing gifts save them, or ultimately destroy her? Don't miss this sci-fi shifter romance with charismatic and engaging characters. Get your copy today, The Oracle of Vidar, available on Amazon or CahiraO'Donnell.com. That's CahiraO'Donnell.com. John Milor is our guest. First of all, John, thanks very much for joining us tonight. Always a great pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
I heard somewhere that there used to be an angelic civilization here on Earth.
Yeah, the Bible actually talks about that. So, like I mentioned, Genesis 1:1 is when Earth started in its creation, and then Genesis 2:1-2 through 2:25 is the recreation of the Earth to a habitable state. That's how I've come to understand it. It's also known as the gap theory. But what existed before the recreation and why did the Earth get destroyed? The word used there in Genesis 1:2 is tohu, which means became destroyed. God destroyed. It says God created the heavens and the earth, and then he destroyed the earth. That's what it means. It became void and without form. So whatever was here, it was absolutely demolished. And you come to find out in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 that there was another civilization here. It describes Lucifer as a king, and it said that this was before he sinned. If you want to know about what happened before, you read in Isaiah 14 and you read in Ezekiel 28. The law of double reference with prophecy, because prophecies tend to echo throughout time and they repeat. But the first iteration of this repeated prophecy was in Lucifer's kingdom when it was destroyed, and why it was destroyed. Lucifer was an angel. He was glorified. It says he walked in the Garden of Eden. So how can he be a king on earth in the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve were given dominion over the earth? It had to be before them. So the more you read it, the more you understand it. A king isn't just a king by himself. He's got a kingdom. He's got subjects. So there had to be angels here. So there was a whole angelic civilization on this planet. And Satan sinned because it says he actually left the earth and ascended unto the clouds and into the throne of God, into the sides of the north. So there was an invasion led from earth, from this planet, into heaven, where he was trying to assault God's throne. Of course, they were trashed, and Satan was thrown back to this earth, but he wasn't the same. He was defeated, and that's how he ended up here, able to manipulate a serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Where do the angels come from? If God created Adam and Eve, but it seems that the angels were before.
They were.
So where did they come from?
So you get more of that history in Job 38. Job talks about how the angels were glorified and singing to God before God laid the foundations of the earth. So there were, Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth, perhaps billions of years ago. These civilizations grew, they flourished, they were incredibly advanced. Think Star Trek, all good guys, for a very long time. Incredibly powerful. Some are like the Q, they could bounce around from planet to planet. They could do some amazing things. They don't need technology. Others more dependent on technology, every variation you can imagine. And then one of these, really the most powerful, one among the most powerful, got this idea that, well, what if we decided to have another leader other than the one who created us? Because I think that he's got it wrong about a few things. And that started this deception in the heavens, and it grew. So Satan, I don't think his planetary throne was here on Earth, but he probably had influence throughout the cosmos. In one of my first books, I described that probably there was a civilization on Mars, and Satan was in charge of that as well, and possibly some of the other planets in our solar system. There's evidence in our solar system that there was a cataclysm a long time ago, a horrific cataclysm. And I talk about it as a planetary explosion. So there was a stronghold where Satan probably had a lot of power, and God blew this planet up. And a chunk of it hit our moon, a chunk of it hit Mars, and a chunk of it hit the Earth. And so then there's evidence of this ancient explosion, and it's the asteroid belt. So there's theory, it's called the exploded planet hypothesis. But I think that has merit, that theory, and it actually lines up with what it talks about in the Bible. It does say in Isaiah 14 that and Ezekiel 28 talks about Satan. He used to walk amidst the stones of fire. Like, what is this? Fiery pebbles on the ground? No, I doubt it. I think that's talking about solar systems, that he could walk amidst the stars. He was so powerful he could go between all of these other civilizations, and that's how he was able to deceive so many.
Wow. John, we're coming up to the time where I have to say so long to you for tonight. You're always welcomed here. I thoroughly enjoy our conversations. And what is your final message that you'd like to share with the X Zone Nation tonight, John?
If anybody is interested in a copy of my book, I give free copies to anybody who wants to give me a review on Amazon. So I'll email you any book that I have. I wrote 13 of them. 4 of them are in this genre, but I have other genre that I write in. I'm all over the place when it comes to things to write about. I have a children's book. I have a book, a fantasy book, different stories. But email me, and jmilor, JMILOR at yahoo.com, or on my website, johnmilor.com. And I'll email you a copy of the book if you give me a free review. Yeah.
Again, John, thanks so much for joining us. Take care, and I look forward to the next time we meet back here in the X Zone.
Okay. Blessings all. Thank you.
Blessings to you too. Bye-bye now. Well, that's it for tonight, X Zone Nation. I'll be back Monday at 10 o'clock as once again we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. To my wife, my senior executive producer, and my best friend, thank you for all your hard work, sweetie. Craig West, Master Control, and Mac Alexander, our Director of Programming. And from everyone else here at the X Zone, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, to each and every one of you, good night, have a safe weekend, and always remember, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. Good night now.